it's Shane, and today's video is going to be about King Sejong. Now, I'm pretty sure even if you don't know that much about Joseon Dynasty history that you would have heard of Sejong대왕. But first, to start with some basic information, he was the fourth monarch of Joseon, so he was one of the very early rulers of the kingdom, and he was born on April 10th, 1397 as Lee-do. So, I want to make a point at this part, like Lee-do, Lee-san, like Lee-young, like these are all what we call 외자 in Korean, which is like it's a one-syllable name. Like my name is Lee Jae-in, which is a two-syllable name, Jae-in, but their names are Do, San, Hyun. Like these are their names, and it's 외자. So the reason for this is actually a very interesting backstory. But in the Joseon Dynasty, basically the regular civilians, like the people that weren't aristocrats or part of the royal family, they were not allowed to read or speak the king's real name. So in the books and everything, they would put a piece of red silk over it, but it just made it easier, and like they had to use like less silk to cover it if it was just one letter instead of two. So that's why they were all 외자. So yeah. And also, King Sejong died on the 17th of February, 1450. And he was only aged 52, so he died relatively young. But then we also have to keep in mind that this was a pretty long time ago. So it was considered not super old for him to die, because it was really long ago. So yeah, but he reigned from the 10th of August, 1418 until the 17th of February, 1450. So what a lot of people don't actually know about Sejong대왕 is that he wasn't first in line to the throne. He was actually the third son of the king before him, of 태종. 태종의 셋째 아들이었는데 원래는 그러면 세자가 아니잖아요? But he was actually called 충녕대군, so Grand Prince 충녕, because like I explained in my previous videos, 대군 is what you call the son of the king's first wife, the queen's son, but when he isn't the crown prince. So he was just a grand prince, essentially. But then his father, King Taejong, favored him more over his elder two sons. So eventually, when King Taejong abdicated, he abdicated in favor of his third son, and that is essentially how King Sejong assumed the throne. So King Sejong has a lot of accomplishments, obviously, which is why he's called King Sejong the Great. But just to go over a few of the many things that he did, first of all, he reorganized the government by appointing people from different social classes as civil servants. So if you know the Qing dynasty, in China, they had these people called mandarins who had to pass this extremely strict civil service exam in order to serve in the government. And this is usually the way that the government structure worked in a lot of the East Asian ancient kingdoms. But King Sejong, of course, he didn't have slaves serving in government, but he allowed it for a large range of people to come and take the exam and join in government. So that was some of the changes that he made. And then second, so in the earlier days of Joseon, he was the fourth ruler, so it was relatively early on in the kingdom. The economy was basically just like a barter and trade system with cloth, grain, cotton, these things. But in 1423, the government attempted to make a national currency, which they wanted to be used in Joseon. And also he opened 3 ports to trade with Japan, and he also launched expeditions to crush Japanese pirates, which were called wegu in the East China Sea. So I think if we talk about Japan and Korea's history, it's pretty complicated, and very little of it is positive, I would say. But I still think that's a pretty admirable thing to do, because at this time in Joseon's history, Joseon was a relatively new kingdom and Japan was a lot stronger. So the fact that he alone launched these expeditions against them as a young king, that was a pretty admirable thing to do. And also he was also a very strong military strategist, so that helped Joseon a lot. And also, this is the part I love the most about him, other than the fact that he created Hangul. In 1420, he created 지편전 in Gyeongbok Palace. If you watch a lot of sageuk or historical Korean dramas, you'll have heard of it. 전하 지편전으로 가셔야 합니다. 이런 말 많이 나오잖아요. 지편전, actually, King Sejong created it. So basically it's an institute within Gyeongbokgung, Gyeongbok Palace for conducting scientific research because King Sejong was very interested in science. He wanted to advance Joseon's technology essentially. And this is probably the reason why one of his closest friends was inventor 장영실. 장영실과 세종대왕의 관계도 진짜 I want to make a separate video on it, but 짧게 얘기를 하자면 이제 영화가 있어요. It's called The Forbidden Dream. 천문 하늘에 묻는다. So basically, 장영실 was a very creative thinker, and he made the first standardized rain gauges, I guess, named 추구기 in 1442. So he was a very renowned inventor and a very close friend of King Sejong. There's a movie about this that I would probably recommend you see. It's called The Forbidden Dream. It's very good. I watched it and I loved it. And yeah, the model actually hasn't survived, unfortunately, but the surviving one was made in 1770 under the reign of King Yeongjo, actually. Did I do a video on King Yeongjo? Maybe not. Maybe I will. But anyways, so unfortunately, we don't have that one right now because it was made such a long time ago. But yeah, it's interesting to know how there were so many bright minds in Joseon, you know? And last one of his accomplishments was in 1426, he enacted a law that granted government slaves, like female government slaves, maternity leave after childbirth. Now, this is like 듣도 보도 못한 일 in Joseon. This is like cannot be happening because in like the rigid caste system in Joseon, it's like slaves are not human beings, which is so fundamentally wrong, but that is what people thought. And the fact that the king went out of his way to provide maternity leave for these people that were essentially being considered like cattle to civilians was, I think that's a very admirable thing to do. Yeah, and eventually the maternity leave was also like lengthened, so it was also before childbirth. And yeah, I think that's a really great thing to do. And of course, to end, he also made Hangul. That's probably what we all know him for, but I hope today's video was, you know, provided more of an in-depth and like, you know, he did a lot of things. He did a lot of great things. So I hope I was able to share some of those with you. Bye! Thank you for watching.